guest today is Laura Davis. She is the author of The Burning Light of Two Stars, the story of her loving yet tumultuous relationship with her mother. You can find out more about her workshops, books, her memoir, and all of her retreats from her website, www.lauradavis.net. So welcome to the show, Laura. I've got my teeth in now, even though I stumbled there with your introduction. Lovely to see you. How are you doing?
I'm great. Enjoying my summer as much as I can. Just going out in nature and just really enjoying beauty. That's my coping strategy for everything happening in the
Uh,
world right now.
Sounds pretty much very similar to mine, I have to say. So, because the show is called Unbroken, the first question that I always ask all of my guests is, what does the word unbroken mean to you?
I think for me, it really speaks to the incredible resilience of human beings. You know, that things that are broken or damaged, can rejuvenate
Mhm.
and don't always go back to the way they were. I'd like to think that in some cases, in many cases, it's possible to be stronger at the broken places. So for me, unbroken means that, no matter what we have experienced in our lives, we're able to regenerate, recreate, and find new pathways, even if some doors are now closed to us.
I love that being stronger in the broken places is kind of exactly what I feel. So, we are going to discuss really your recent book and your journey with your mum, but it kind of all goes back really to being abused by your grandfather, your mum's father, when you were just a little girl, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was, a devastating experience that I had as a little girl. And like many survivors of sexual abuse, my way of dealing with the trauma was to suppress it, to repress it, and to just bury it in my body and in my subconscious. And memories of that abuse started to surface when I was 27 years old, and it was in the context of my first really committed love relationship. And I think for me, it was when sexuality and intimacy got put together,
Hmm.
those memories just immediately started to surface. And for me, it was devastating to feel like in some ways it made sense. My whole life made sense because it explained a lot of things I had never understood about myself and the things that had challenged me. And on the other hand, it was completely devastating because it changed my whole view of the world and my family. And then once The Courage to Heal, which was the book I wrote with Ellen Bass about the healing process, once that book became this kind of surprising runaway bestseller, I was on national TV. I was getting a lot of media and I was on national TV. So now it just made from their point of view, the betrayal, my betrayal, bigger. And it
Yes.
created even more of a rift. So the book, while it was serving, probably millions of women, I mean, I think because it got passed from hand to hand to hand to hand, so one book would influence many survivors, both women and men, I have to say. It was still creating this huge rift with my family, which had been the thing that had terrified me when we were about to publish it. And in some ways, my worst fears did come true, but they just didn't come true permanently. And that's the story I tell in the memoir.
Yes, but they said that you're traipsing around the country spreading lies about the family because obviously it's for someone who hasn't read it. There's two. There's the workbook and there's the Courage to Heal, the first book, and it's just little stories, really, isn't it? Kind of throughout when you, I think she'd fallen again, and you were then at the hospital, and she was screaming and screaming, and the word you said something like that the word help had been trapped inside her, or you suddenly had an understanding or an insight into maybe what had been going on for her, but the screaming sounded just awful.
Yeah, I think anyone who's been a caregiver probably has had these kind of experiences that I wrote about. I really wanted to. It was very important to me not to create some kind of like sappy, happy ending.
Yeah.
Even though I think my mother and I came incredibly far,
Hmm.
and I came incredibly far. I was able to open my heart to her in a way I never had before, which has really had a huge influence on my life since. It's like I broke through a barrier in terms of my capacity to love in loving her at the end of her life. she was a really difficult person, but I really wanted people to love and admire her as a character. I mean, I wanted her to be a fully fleshed out person. And part of that for me was making myself more vulnerable as the drafts of the book went on. I have a colleague who read some early drafts and she just trashed the book and tore it apart and basically said, you know, you're making yourself into the hero and your mother into the villain. And this is awful. I
Hmm.
mean, she didn't use those words, but she was very strong. And she said, Laura, this is not the courage to heal, it's the courage to reveal. And so I put that up on my wall. And after a few months where I just set the book aside, I was so distraught from her feedback. I got back to it and I really worked on really showing my own underbelly more and my own flaws and the ways I failed in this relationship as well. And I think it makes a much more dynamic, honest story instead of, one where I'm the hero and she's the villain.
Yeah. No, no, it's what came across was, as you just explained earlier, her struggles, her journey and her life. And I always think whether she really disbelieved you or not, she's got to live with that, knowing that perhaps her father did this. She could never be 100% sure. And the other things that used to take place when he used to check if people's breasts were growing, she had a notion that it wasn't 100% right. So she had to live with that. And I think part of her must have known, and to cover that up and just to pretend or just to tell you that's not what she thought. I don't think that's easy. I think that's hard for someone to keep that inside as well.
I mean, one thing things I've realized about her that are on the positive side, and one is that, she was my mother. She was a huge influence shaping me. And I feel like she helped me become a woman who had the strength to face the sexual abuse and many other things in my life that have been hard. And it's sort of like I feel like she pushed me over the finish line, but she couldn't get there herself.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think, we try to do that with our children. I think we try to help them become stronger, more capable, than we were, and to try to not pass on the same kind of damage. And in some ways, like she gave me the strength to do what she could not do.
yeah. No, that is lovely. She pushed me over the finish line. That is a really powerful thing to say. And also at the end, you and your brother kind of didn't reconcile, but you'd had a bit of a bridge between your relationship. And at the end, you said, I don't know what religion you experience or you follow, but you said that you wanted to watch her being cremated. And you went through your own kind of forgiveness ceremony where the two of you apologized for the way that you'd let each other down. And that was actually, it was really beautiful to read as well, but powerful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think with my brother, there was, I think this is typical. Women, daughters often become the caregivers, and the brothers. My brother promised to show up, but
Mhm.
he really didn't show up. Uh, I mean, he showed up occasionally when it suited him, but I did all the heavy, Karen and I did the heavy lifting, and I was really pissed at him. So we did have some healing we had to do because, he's the last surviving member of my nuclear family,
Mhm.
and I really want to hold on to that relationship.
And talking of Karen, I think we all need a Karen. I just was in love with her as well. What an amazing woman. And your mum clearly adored her as well. She's just, people talk about a rock or whatever, but yeah, she's just, I think I would just trust whatever she said. She just made so much sense.
Yeah, Karen definitely, she was a huge, she really helped she helped take care of my mother. I was traveling a lot for work and she would always step up when I was gone. And even when I wasn't, she planted a garden for my mother. She just really showed up in a lot of different ways. But she also confronted me. She was the person who confronted me about kind of this habitual way I saw my mother as the villain.
Mhm.
And uh, she really helped me have a more open position,
Mhm.
and not just repeating the same pattern of this is who she is, this is our history. I had a story I was telling, and I think part of the story of the memoir is how I had to admit that my story about the relationship wasn't wholly true.